Hello and welcome to the Emerging Enterprise IT Security Innovations EcoCast event brought to you by Actual Tech Media. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us on today's special event. It's here that you'll hear from security experts at AT&T Cybersecurity, KnowBe4, and SaltStack. Security in the enterprise is a scary place, and thankfully we have some really cool, really innovative solutions to help you better secure your IT organization. Before we kick off today's presentation, I want to give you a little bit of background on the EcoCast event and do some quick housekeeping. So if you haven't been on these events before, we created the EcoCast and MegaCast event series to help you as IT professionals learn about the most innovative enterprise-grade IT solutions available to you today to help you to do it all in one place, quickly and efficiently. You don't have to go downtown to the convention center or anything like that. We want you to get all your questions answered. We want this to be a very educational event, and we hope to make the whole event fun with some cool prizes. Now, on today's event, I mentioned prizes. I'll talk more about those in just a moment. I want to call your attention to the questions box there on your audience console. The console that you see in the web browser is kind of like a windowed operating system. You can take the questions box, you can drag it around if you click on the title bar, you can resize it by clicking on the corner, and you can do the same thing with the slides window. So I encourage you to maximize those windows, place them on your desktop so that you can get the most benefit out of today's event, because you will see architectural diagrams, you'll see videos, live demos, all sorts of cool things will appear in the slides window, so you want that as large as possible, but you also want the questions box there visible so that you can ask questions as you go along. I'll also have some poll questions for you out there in the audience, and I'll be sharing the results of most of those poll questions with you so you can see how you stack up with your peers. Now, we want this to be a social event as well, so I'll be talking about the hashtag for the event in just a moment, but the cool thing is you can actually tweet directly from your console using the Twitter icon, and the hashtag will be automatically appended. And then finally, we have some hand-selected resources from today's presenters. You'll find those in the Handouts tab, which is just to the right of the questions box there on the audience console, so make sure you check those out. We'll be giving away 3 $500 Tango gift cards on today's event. If you aren't familiar with Tango gift cards, the cool thing about these is that they can actually be exchanged for gift cards at just about any place you can think of. Amazon, Apple, Best Buy, restaurants. They can even be donated directly to charity, and the cool thing is that they never expire. And that's why we've moved over to handing out the Tango gift cards instead of gift cards from a specific company, to give you all out there in the audience as prize winners the ultimate flexibility to exchange these gift cards for whatever you would like. Now, the requirements to be eligible for the prize drawings, you can actually find those if you go to the Handouts tab and scroll to the bottom. There's a link right there to our prize terms and conditions. You must be present on the live event to be eligible at all. If you're watching this event on demand, I'm sorry, these drawings have already occurred. Now, through the EcoCast and MegaCast event series, we've given out thousands of dollars to the charities you see on the screen here, thanks to generous prize winners who choose to donate their prize values to charity. If you'd like to do that, we would love to help make that possible. The hashtag for today's event on Twitter is Security EcoCast. And today's event is produced by Actual Tech Media, and I'm your moderator, David M. Davis. Feel free to follow both of us on Twitter. I'll be monitoring the event on Twitter and following and responding to just about anybody who tweets using the hashtag. You can also subscribe to everything we're doing at Actual Tech Media on our YouTube page, our Facebook page, on LinkedIn, and our 10 on Tech podcast. In fact, on the top right-hand side of your console, you'll see icons for each of those different resources. Feel free to click on those now and subscribe away. And there's one more resource I want to draw your attention to before I give a little state of security in the enterprise, and that is the Countermeasure Newsletter. This is the Enterprise IT Security Newsletter, and I think you'll find it is the coolest security newsletter anywhere out there. It comes every Saturday, like clockwork, and you can subscribe at thecountermeasure.co to keep up to date on the latest and greatest security countermeasures on how to protect you and your company. It arrives in your inbox every Saturday morning. And in fact, I've also placed the link for that in the handouts tab there on your audience console. Now, before we jump into it with our first presentation, I just want to set the stage here for what we're up against as IT professionals who are responsible for protecting our IT organizations. I mean, it's a frightening time for anyone in charge of protecting your company's data. The cost of cybercrime is set to hit $6 trillion annually by 2021, and that's not because just a single business was hit with $6 trillion in damages. That's because hundreds of thousands of medium, small, and large companies were hit with cybercrime attacks. Now, unfilled cybersecurity jobs are expected to reach 1.5 million by 2019. That's this year. And the cybersecurity unemployment rate is 0%. So if you're a cybersecurity expert or you're looking to become one, now is a good time to learn more about cybersecurity and what you can do to protect your company. And then it's expected that up to 200 billion IoT devices will need securing by 2020. That's next year. And we're hearing about ransomware damages and attacks almost every night, it seems like, in the news. So what is it that we as IT professionals are supposed to do? We've got many different pieces of a cybersecurity defense solution. It's not just one magic bullet, one silver box we can put in the data center and check the box and say, yes, we're secure. Enterprise security solutions have to be applied in layers. You've heard of defense in depth, and that's what you'll hear about on today's event. Many different security solutions that you can apply at different points in different layers to better protect your company. There are innovative IPS, IDS, firewall solutions that protect the perimeter of your network. That's critical. That's a critical piece of your network security layer. And then there are microsegmentation solutions that protect the soft GUI center, if you will, of your data center, of your network. There's anti-malware solutions, mobile device management, authentication, authorization, data protection, end user security awareness, auditing solutions, and much more. And that's why I'm really excited about today's event. I hope that you are too, because we have three of the most innovative IT security companies on the event today. You'll hear about the AlienVault solution from AT&T Cybersecurity. You'll learn about how you can protect your first line of defense at your company with the Know Before solution. And you'll learn how the SaltStack SecOps solution can bring security and operations together to help prevent and remediate malicious attacks. We've got a great event lined up for you today. Let's get started. All right, looks like most of the audience has voted now. So let me share the results of this poll with you. And it looks like 15% work at very large enterprises, 10,000 plus. Another roughly 16% work at small companies. The big winner here was 19% that work at, I would say, medium-sized companies, but we have a real good representation of all different size organizations across the event today. So thank you for voting in that poll. Our next poll here is, what's your industry vertical? And as you can imagine, there's a lot of different verticals. You may need to scroll down on the slides window on the right-hand side there, or you can just click the maximize button on the slides window, and that will fill up your browser window with the slides window inside, and you'll definitely see all the verticals then. So just scroll down the list there, find your vertical, and again, I'll share the results of this poll question with you so you can see what kind of other verticals are represented on today's Security EcoCast. And I want to say thank you to everyone who's checking in and saying good morning, howdy from Texas, all sorts of great comments coming in. We're responding to those as quickly as we possibly can. There's so many great comments coming in. Thank you. Please keep those comments coming. Also, as we start our presentations today, please keep your questions coming. We have experts with decades of security experience, and we're going to do our best to answer all of your security questions. So use that questions box there as much as you'd like, and we'll try to answer every single question if we possibly can. All right, looks like most everyone has voted in that poll, and let's take a look at the results here. So 31% from technology companies. Beyond that, we have a good representation. We have 10% higher education, 10% healthcare, 9% finance and banking, 5% real estate, 8% retail. I'm not going to read them all down the list there. You can scroll down yourself and see. But again, a real good representation of different types of verticals on today's Security EcoCast. So thank you for voting in that poll. And then here's the last poll question before we start our first presentation. And the question is, what's your time frame for updating your existing or selecting new security solutions? We're just trying to get an idea here of what your plans are. You're watching the Security EcoCast. You might be interested in updating your security infrastructure would be my guess. So I'll give you a chance to answer that poll question. Again, we appreciate your votes. And looks like most everyone has voted. If you haven't voted, time to get it in now because we are getting started with today's first presenter. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Tom Diaquino, Director of Sales Engineering at AT&T Cybersecurity. Tom, are you with us?
Yes, sir, I am.
Thanks for being on the Security EcoCast, Tom. Take it away.
My pleasure. Thank you for having us, and appreciate everybody for attending our session today. We're going to go ahead and jump into a couple of quick slides, and we'll spend the majority of our time here with you today actually running through a demo of our products so that you can see some of the capabilities that we have. So I represent AT&T Cybersecurity, and we've got a pretty good collection of products and services that provide, just really comprehensive security, the concept we call security without the seams. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but at a high level, let's start with just why we do what we do, right? And I think that's a really important component of what we'll show in this demo. So the why that AT&T Cybersecurity is really carrying forward here just boils down to a couple of basic beliefs. The first is, we believe that a cybersecurity solution should be simple. It should be simple to deploy, simple to manage, and simple to use, right? So if it's going to be effective, it has to be simple. That way you're not spending more time managing the solution than you are actually getting value from it, right? So simplicity is an important element. The next, kind of critical belief here for us is really that, we believe for a cybersecurity solution to be effective, it really has to provide consistent visibility throughout an inconsistent environment, right? As the perimeter dissipates for most of these organizations that have to secure their user base and their services across different infrastructure as a service providers, different SaaS providers. You have all these different places where data lives now that are just, fundamentally unlike each other, right? And how do you get good security visibility across all of those different elements of infrastructure, basically that companies have to manage? And so, these are two kind of core beliefs that we're really using to carry forward what it is we do. So we've got a platform called USM Anywhere, which basically does a combination of attack detection across, as I said, a very inconsistent set of infrastructure components, right? So we can reach into a lot of different places and collect an immense amount of data and do apply a great set of analytics and evaluation criteria against the data that we capture from those environments. And then we've got an Alien Labs team that is basically looking at a bunch of crowdsourced threat intelligence from our Open Threat Exchange and capturing that data. The information in our Open Threat Exchange is actually integrated natively into the USM Anywhere platform. So it's basically the world's largest open source threat intelligence repository with millions and millions of indicators of compromise that are basically automatically integrated into every USM Anywhere platform that gets deployed. But in addition to that, the Alien Labs team is, spending an immense amount of time working with the data that they have there. There's a bunch of automated mechanisms that they have in place to evaluate the indicators that are published to us, and we use all this intelligence that we develop or capture out of that platform, and actually use it to enrich the USM Anywhere solution with additional analytics and evaluation capabilities, things we call correlation rules. So we build these correlation rules into our platform and constantly update them, adding new ones every week. And we've been doing this for multiple years now. As a value add to the platform is really extending the capability of your security team by saying, hey, we've got these threat experts out there that are constantly enhancing the capabilities of threat detection in this platform, right? So it's a pretty powerful component. And then the next piece is automated and orchestrated incident response, where we basically use a series of these development or these rule mechanisms so that you can automate response to certain types of threat vectors in the environment. And so we'll look at a couple of these things in detail as we jump into a demo here. So without further ado, I'm actually going to just go ahead and jump right into the UI of the platform so that you guys can get a sense of what I'm talking about here, and then we'll come back and wrap up with Q&A. And this might be a little bit of a crash course into the USM Anywhere interface because we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to try to push through it here and capture the most compelling pieces for you. Okay, so this is the USM Anywhere interface, specifically our main overview dashboard, and it kind of breaks up into three specific areas. The first up at the top here is essentially the data that we've captured from the environments that we're monitoring. So there's a combination of event data and what we call alarms. And our alarms are essentially sort of next level alerts that we generate based on the underlying data that we've captured from the environment. So when we look at all of these events that we're bringing in from systems and infrastructure and everything else, we evaluate that data and we look for indicators that might tell us that something suspicious is going on, and we'll elevate those events in the form of an alarm, and we break them down into basically 5 categories here that makes it relatively simple for you to figure out, where do we put the majority of our time and attention, right? And this is actually really consistent with how a typical environment would look over a 30-day window. You see a lot of stuff happening in the environmental awareness and reconnaissance and probing categories, a little bit less in the delivery and attack, a lot less in the exploitation and installation and system compromise areas. And clearly these 2 or 3 categories up at the top are the ones that are the most significant from a risk standpoint. And so those are the areas that you really want to start with. But as you work to investigate these and clear them out, you can kind of work your way down into the lower level stuff and figure out, okay, what's happening here that we could go put some changes in our environment in place that might reduce some of this environmental awareness risk that could potentially lead to a system compromise kind of problem at some point down the road, right? So just breaking these things up across this is actually the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain taxonomy that we're leveraging here, but it just really helps users of our platform to focus their attention accordingly, right? So that's the top level of the dashboard. And then we've got an asset discovery component here, which essentially gives you awareness of what you're actually seeing in the environment from an asset standpoint. How do the various operating system distributions break down across the environment? How many assets do you have in total? What types of software exists on those assets? And which of these assets are the most significant from a volume of alarms and events standpoint. And then a piece at the bottom here is our vulnerability assessment view. So we actually have a vulnerability assessment capability built into the platform. We do authenticated scanning of hosts in the environment, and we'll go capture all this information and bring it back and give you visibility into how many vulnerabilities exist on the systems in your environment and which of those assets are most vulnerable. And all of this information is actually tied back to our open threat exchange. So if you see a vulnerability in your environment, you can actually go look in our OTX interface and figure out, it will link you directly to some details around what threat campaigns are actually taking advantage of these vulnerabilities. So there's some really, really cool goodness that comes together with these various things. So I'm just going to jump really quickly over to another view here, which will help you understand a little bit more detail about how we get all of this information, right? So that's I've shown you a lot of stuff. The question most people have is, okay, that's great, but how do you actually capture all of this data? And it's basically three different components that we have in our platform. We have sensors, agents, and integrations. I'm going to start with the sensors. Sensors are basically virtual appliances, and these virtual appliances will sit in different types of different parts of your network and do a number of different things like syslog log collection. So we've got a syslog listener. We can ingest logs from firewalls and other systems in the environment. It does network intrusion detection monitoring. So we hook into the network and the appliance actually looks for threat vectors on the wire. And then we also do the asset discovery and vulnerability assessment piece from the sensor. So it scans the network, figures out what assets are there, and works to do that authenticated scanning and vulnerability assessment as well. So all of that happens on the sensor. We've actually got sensors for a number of different types of environments. So for your on-prem stuff, you can use both Hyper-V and VMware virtual appliances and cover your on-premise environment. If you're using Microsoft Azure or AWS, we have sensors custom built for those environments so that we can hook into the AWS API, for example, and actually capture information about the EC2 instances and the services that you're using in AWS, and similar concept for Microsoft Azure. So that's our sensor component that does a really nice job of capturing a lot of high quality information. And by the way, I'm showing the quick start guides here. The deployment guides for these different sensor types are actually really, really good. They're very comprehensive. They get you up and running really quickly, and we've got a team that also supports you with that. I'm going to skip ahead really quick to the integrations as another data source, simply because it's another piece that kind of comes back to some of those we believe statements that I made earlier, right? You've got all of these different components, AWS and Azure in your environment. You got, Office 365 and G Suite and Box. Salesforce is one that we have coming. So there's just all these different SaaS providers where you probably have important data stored in these services, and you need to be able to audit who's accessing that data, what are they doing in these services, and that's what a lot of these integrations are intended to do. The Box integration is one that we just released. This actually allows you to get visibility into the authentication activity against Box. Same thing with Office 365, and typically when we build something, an integration like this, we also build a dashboard for it. So you can see there's a Box dashboard. This is out of the box. And we also build a bunch of analytics or correlation engine kind of stuff. So you can get visibility into things like failed login activity and who's accessing what and things like that. Kind of jumping over to the Office 365 view here for a second, you can see there's some really good stuff in Active Directory and OneDrive, SharePoint, so we can get a ton of good visibility into what's happening in Office 365 and show you, what users you're having potentially issues with, where they're connecting from, and things of that nature, right? So again, just working to provide consistent visibility across all of these different environments. and you're actually, pulling all of this information in, natively in the platform. So these integration apps are the component that help you go capture that. And then our correlation rules built by our Alien Labs team are taking all of this event data and elevating it into alarms when there's something that we recognize as a significant problem. So that's when you'll see stuff show up in the alarms dashboard or in this alarms interface here where you can start to investigate problems, right? So those are a couple of key elements in terms of how do we get visibility, how do we do what we do. Now, the next thing that I'll highlight for you is, actually digging into some of these issues, trying to understand, what does all of this activity mean, and how can we get some better understanding of it, so we can, drill into one of these alarms, and from here, we'll show you in the alarm itself the underlying event that triggered this alarm, so you can go look at the event details and get the individual fields that we've parsed out, as well as the original raw event, and use that to help you kind of investigate what the nature of this thing is. And if you decide at some point that this is the type of alarm that we'd like to take some action against and do that in an automated fashion, you can actually do that with something we call a response action rule. And so the response action rules will give you that facility to be able to take some kind of action. And these are typically run through our integrations, right? So all of those integrations that you saw on the integrations page, like if you had Carbon Black or Cisco Umbrella, we could run some kind of automated response against those services. Maybe we want to post a domain to Cisco Umbrella and say, hey, this is something that we want to block for future users that are querying this domain. Maybe we want to open a ticket in Jira or ServiceNow. You can leverage our agent if you deploy that out across various systems in your environment. You can leverage the agent to pull a number of different types of detailed information off of the endpoint, so you can automate some stuff there. So there's a number of different, interesting, and here's, in fact, for the box integration, we've got a couple of different response actions here, right? So if we see an alert that makes us feel like, hey, this particular user was, this user's credentials were compromised or something, and let's go ahead and disable that box user so that we can respond accordingly and prevent any data exfiltration while we have a chance to go actually update the user's credentials and figure out how they got compromised in the first place, right? So response action rules, that's that third sort of pillar that I talked about there that is really, really interesting. The other thing that I'll jump into here and show you just briefly, actually, let's take it from the vulnerabilities view. So if you're looking at underlying vulnerabilities that have been detected in the environment, you can sort of capture these things from a severity standpoint, so you can sort this by severity and figure out or filter by severity, so you can kind of assess what are the most critical things in my environment. Let's drill down into these guys, and once you've got this understanding of where these vulnerabilities are that exist in your environment, you can also drill down into this more information piece, and that's going to take you to our Open Threat Exchange, and we're going to give you much more detail around the nature of this vulnerability, right? So we can point you to external services that will help you do some research around the nature of this vulnerability and what you need to do to resolve it and things of that nature. So we provide all the CVSS details and a lot of that information. The external references are here. So this is all really, really helpful. But the piece that is just major value add is the related pulses. So these are going to show you essentially, if you drill down into one of these guys, it's going to show you the specific indicators of compromise that have known to be associated with this particular CVE. So you can see there are some file hashes here. These are known bad files that have been linked to attack campaigns that take advantage of that CVE. And there will be, in some cases, IP addresses and domains, email addresses, things of that nature. So lots of different types of indicators that will populate through here that you can keep an eye out for in your environment. And again, we'll pull a lot of this detail into our platform automatically. So if we see a file hash that matches one of these indicators, then we'll automatically raise that as an alarm. And so where would we detect that file hash? Well, we pick it up in the sensor on the network intrusion detection side. We might see a file be downloaded into your environment. So when we see it transferred over the network, we'll extract the file hash for the file as it's being transferred over the network, and we'll compare it to our indicators of compromise. And we also use our AlienVault agent when it's installed on endpoints. If we see a file hash come through that way, then we'll compare that against indicators of compromise as well. And we'll use various other things like domains and IP addresses in the same sort of fashion. So that is, I think, probably about the amount of time that I have here to run through this. We probably need to shift over to some Q&A. Am I right?
Yeah, Tom, that'd be great. Yeah, we do have some questions here for you, but I really love seeing the live demo. Love seeing the product in action. I'm sure the audience does too. Before I pop up the poll question on what other resources the audience would like to see, I want to make sure that I call the some attention to the slide on the screen here. You can test drive USM Anywhere in an interactive online demo right there. And in fact, these URLs on the screen, I believe if you mouse over them, actually I'm going to try it myself. If you mouse over them, you should be able to click them. No, that's not working. But it's AlienVault.com is the URL. And also if you check out the handout that's available there in the audience console, you can download that. That is on how to reduce cybersecurity risk and simplify your journey to compliance with the AlienVault solution. So let me pop up this poll question for the audience. It says, what additional information would you like about the AT&T cybersecurity solution? And I'll just leave that up there. You can select any type of resource you'd like, including a personal demo, or give it a try for yourself. So first question that came in here, Tom, and I'm not sure about this one. We'll just throw it out there. If you don't know the answer, that's okay. We can get back to them afterwards. Complex question here. In my opinion, will this tool work on air-gapped networks? That is, does it require internet access?
Right, great question. So it actually will not work in air-gapped environments because it does require internet access. The sensor is really the only component that lives in the customer environment. We actually operate this platform as a SaaS solution. As I said, driving towards that simplicity component. We keep the analytics engine, the correlation piece, the data storage, all of that stuff lives in an AlienVault cloud that we manage for our customers so that they don't have to do that sort of extra administrative management of a data analytics and data storage platform, right? So all that lives in the cloud, and we have to be able to have the sensor communicating with our cloud infrastructure in order for that to work.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's where the real power, in this product, I'm sure comes into play. There's only so much you can do locally, but by bringing the cloud into the picture, you open up tremendous possibilities there for all sorts of the different services you talked about and benefits. Another question here, they're asking, a lot of people have heard about everyone's heard of AT&T, but can you talk for a moment about just AT&T Cybersecurity's strength and why someone or why your customers have chosen AT&T Cybersecurity?
Yeah, great question. And that gives me an opportunity also to revisit the security without the seams kind of concept, which is something that we're really driving with the market now simply because, we've got a really powerful set of services or platforms that cover security needs end to end. So there's a lot of technology goodness in there. We've got we've got a secure email gateway solution that's really powerful and covers your prevention from an email standpoint. We've got a platform that does the global secure gateway. We're able to provide basically content filtering and threat prevention as a cloud-based gateway for your users as they browse the internet and things like that, right? So you really can put a lot of different prevention mechanisms in place through these various platforms that we offer, and then ultimately bring the content that those systems generate from an alerting or eventing standpoint back into USM Anywhere, so that you get visibility in a single pane of glass across all of these different pieces of infrastructure that we can provide. And then the last component connected to that really revolves around the fantastic service level capabilities that we have. So really we can manage just about anything from a security standpoint. We can do endpoint protection management for you. We can do firewall management for you. We have a SOC we call Threat Manager that can do that next level sort of security analysis and incident response for you, right? So we've got a series of really nice services that tie really well into the platforms that we offer. And we also have a key collection of consultants on our team that are really the best of the best when it comes to things like PCI compliance and ISO 27001 compliance and all these various things. So we've got a group that can sit down and work with you to understand what are your objectives as a business, as a security team and a business that you need help sort of putting the right pieces in place and developing a program around. And these guys are complete experts in being able to make recommendations and help you get as quickly as possible to those objectives, right? So, that combination of high value service add along with all of these components from a technology standpoint that fit really well together is the concept of security without seams that we're just really proud of pushing forward in the market.
Very nice, very nice. And a question that just came in here is AlienVault an AT&T subsidiary, or does it operate independently?
So AlienVault is basically a technology platform that started out as an independent company and was acquired by AT&T. And since AlienVault has been acquired by AT&T, we've actually merged with so that the AlienVault team has merged with what was formerly the AT&T Managed Security Services team. So they had a pretty decent collection of, like I said, that consultancy and a bunch of different services that were in place within AT&T that we ended up pulling together into a single business unit called AT&T Cybersecurity. And so AlienVault USM is now just a technology component that's owned by AT&T Cybersecurity, which is a business unit of AT&T Business. Hopefully that answers the question.
Excellent, yeah. And if somebody wanted to get started with this, kind of what's the effort level required?
Yeah, great question. So that the level of effort is actually really, really straightforward. I mean, it typically takes, let's say, to deploy a sensor in AWS or Azure. AWS is really, really easy. It can take, as little as 15 minutes to get that done, just to get the sensor itself deployed. And one of the great things about that sensor is that it actually uses the AWS API to hook in and do just a ton of automated capture of information in the environment, right? So you don't actually have to do a lot of configuration of that sensor. The most configuration that needs to be done on the AWS sensor, for example, is really just getting the logs from your EC2 instances into the sensor. And there's a couple of ways that we can simplify that process, either with the agent or leveraging some of the AWS infrastructure to move the data in a really seamless fashion. So we've tried to put a lot of thought into how we can make the deployment of this thing as simple as possible. And as a result, we usually spend somewhere inside of a week of some deployment effort with the majority of our customers. And when I say a week, that typically involves, us engaging with a customer for an hour at a time for maybe a few different sessions, and the customer going off and maybe doing a few specific things in their environment over the course of that week. So we might see somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 18 hours of total time invested in this, where at the end of that, the customer starts to see really, in fact, as soon as we get started, they start seeing immense value coming from the platform. But at the end of that initial week, the impact that it's having is really high, right? So it's literally the progress is measured in hours, where other platforms that try to accomplish the same sort of thing, there's just so much more manual, configuration and bootstrapping required that it can take weeks, if not months, to get the same level of visibility in place.
Very nice, very nice. Let's see. Last question we probably have time for. That is, what's the pricing model? How does the pricing work on this?
Yeah, great. So pricing is based on storage tiers. So essentially, we have the cloud platform that we're ingesting all of this data into. You can, if you get our standard tier, it has 30 days worth of retention, and we'll base it on that 30 days on how much data you want to store in the cloud for that 30-day time period. So we can do it by increments of 250 and then 500 gigabytes, and so we can go to multiple terabytes worth of storage if you need it. And we can also do that across a 90-day window for people that need compliance requirements to be met, like PCI compliance. It says you have to have 90 days worth of searchable hot storage data retained. So we cover that with what we call our premium storage service, where we give you 90 days. So there's a couple of different pricing models in there, but it's really about how much data do you want to store and how long do you want to store it for is how the pricing is structured. You can deploy as many of those alien apps as you need to. We don't have any licensing costs associated with the apps. You can deploy as many agents as you need to without worrying about licensing on a per agent basis. Obviously, both of those things will impact the volume of data that you're storing in the cloud, and so that's where the cost will play in. But we really try to work with our customers to make sure that in the data that you're storing, it's stuff that actually provides value for you, and you're comfortable that you're spending what you're spending to get that value, right? So,
excellent. Well, it sounds really easy to use. I love the live demo again. Thank you so much for being on the event today, Tom.
That's my pleasure. Thank you.
For more information, of course, check out the handout that's available there in your audience console. And now it's time for our first $500 Tango gift card award. That is going out to Mark Howard of Colorado. Congratulations, Mark Howard of Colorado. If you are not Mark Howard of Colorado, we've got 2 more chances to win gift cards on today's event, so make sure you stay tuned for those. All right, now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Greg Cross, Chief Success Officer at KnowBe4. Greg, are you with us?
I am. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being on the event today, Greg. Take it away.
All right, great. So I'm going to be doing a presentation. I'll be talking about the KnowBe4 New School Security Awareness Training. I've got a few slides, and then I'm going to jump right into a product demo, as long as I can get the screen sharing to work quickly, which I think I can figure it out. But let me tell you a little bit about KnowBe4. So we are certainly the largest integrated security awareness platform out there. We've got over 24,000 different customers in many different verticals, as you can see. We're in Tampa Bay, so it's nice and warm and sunny here. We are, the core group is from the security space. We managed antivirus software. We made antivirus software. took some time off out of that, looking at what were the problems that need to be solved, realized that you have users really do need training, and they need to have some way to measure that training and see the efficacy of it. And that introduced us into what we do, which is what I call the New School Security Awareness Training. So this is a graph taken from our customer base. This is looking at everyone once they get onto the platform. The first thing we always recommend that people do is a baseline phishing test to find out how the profile is for the organization. And you can see across everything, 27% failure rate is the norm. So 1 in 4 people are going to fall for that phishing test right out the door, which is quite honestly terrifying. But the good news is you can make it a lot better, and you can make it a lot better very quickly. So on our platform, we see traditionally after 3 months that's cut in half down to the 13% mark. And then over a year, it's continued to drop down to a much more manageable 2%, 3%, depending on the organization. And probably most interesting on that is that not only does it drop, it stays down. This is the concept that our platform is built around, is that you're actually enacting a culture change, and people actually pay attention to things. I do like to point out it is security awareness training. You're not trying to make everybody into a master hacker. If you try that, you're not going to have a good time, but rather you just want people to be aware of the threats that are out there and know what to do, what the correct escalation is, know where to take things when they see something that's wrong, and basically just be part of the security solution for an organization rather than being part of the problem. So without further ado, let me go ahead and actually share what the platform looks like. So coming up here, you should actually see the screen. It's all hosted in the cloud. It's something you don't have to install any software. It's all done inside of AWS. We have instances in the US and Europe. And there are a couple optional components that you can install in your environment. But from the admin view, which is what we're looking at, what you're going to be presented with to begin with is a risk score. So this is taking into account not just the behavior of the users as it comes to phishing, but it's also looking at the training. Have they been in breaches? What is their role in the organization? That's all fed into what we call the Virtual Risk Officer, or VRO. So this is an AI that's processing and looking at all of the data across all of the different users, and then coming up with a probability index of what is the chances that this person is going to fail a phishing exercise, and what is the threat level of that based off of the risk of the person. So risk score is the highest level metric that you're going to get. You can scroll down and see things like the phishing results and compare yourself, your industry, and your size against what other organizations have done. You have some metrics around the Phish Alert button. This is one of those optional components I mentioned. It's a plugin for Outlook, Office 365, G Suite, Exchange, and it gives the users a way to report what they think is a phishing email. If it's a simulation, they get a well done, and the email is just removed from their mailbox. If it's not a simulation, it gets forwarded to the incident response team so that they can actually analyze that and see what's going on. So you get some numbers here about that, and then you have some numbers on training. So that's the high level. I like to jump in and kind of talk about how people get started with this platform, because there's a lot to go over, and I could talk for hours, and I'm not allowed to talk for hours. So I'm going to keep it short. So when the person first starts on the platform, we always start them off with what we call ASAP, the Automated Security Awareness Program. It starts off with a questionnaire, about 15, 20 questions. When you are done, you end up with what you see here, which is a program. And you can see the program actually starts off with things that have nothing to do with the console, nothing at all. It's literally designed to be, I have no security awareness program, or I have a very basic one. How do I make one that works? So we start off with engaging stakeholders, customizing our console, and then down the list of getting everything going. So this is really where we always get people going in the platform, so they know what to do and how to actually have some success in changing security culture. So I'm going to skip from here and jump into the users. So everything in the console is based around users and groups. So if I can spell Fritz correctly, we will look at him as an example of what sort of data we have on users. Now, the users are added into the console either through single sign-on mechanisms. There's an Active Directory integration. You can upload them. But one way or another, the users are in the console, and we're able to look at them at individual level. So here's that risk score again, and you can see on the spider graph a little bit of data of how that risk score is calculated. So we have booster, which is a value that the admin can actually set for users and groups to raise the risk based off of some data that they know. We have the exposure, which is the user bit in breaches. When was that breach? How big was the breach? The function that they have in the organization, their behavior when it comes to phishing emails, and what training they've taken. So all of those go together, and they create the risk score for the user. So you can see that over time. And then we go down a little further. We can see the details of, again, the things that contribute to that, which would be their phishing results of what types of failures they've had, what training they've completed, and then down below that we have a whole timeline of everything that's ever happened with the user inside the console. So let's jump over and talk about that phishing a little bit more. And when we do phishing, you're going to do it on a campaign basis. So I have a sample here of what an initial baseline phishing might look like. And you can drill into that, find your failures over time as it starts, and then go in further if you wanted to, and look at what users did what. So we have several different types of failures. So we have clicking, which is very obvious. Replied, this is where there's no links, there's no attachments. These are those types of phishing emails you see where it's like, hey, I'm on holiday, can you give me a call, or can you reply to me with your best phone number to reach you at? Those types of phishing emails. So we simulate those very well so we can track replies. We have attachments. These are your Office documents or HTML documents. We're looking to see if they open those. Some of those have macros that are in those that can be enabled. If they're enabling macros, it's pretty bad. Data entered actually has to do with what happens after a person clicks a link, either in an email or in an attachment. They get some sort of a landing page, and did they try to log in? So your credential fish type things. We don't actually keep what they type in, but we do track that and record that and give that back to the admin. And then where applicable, we can actually ask the browser what plugins are available and are any of them known to have vulnerabilities, because that's another indication that how bad it would have been if that user had actually clicked on one of those simulations. And then reported is that fish alert button I mentioned earlier, where the user could say, I think that was a phishing email. So to set up your own campaign, it's actually very easy to do. There's a few things you need to know. You need to know what you're going to send. So that is done through email templates. You can have your own templates, or you can utilize system templates, and you can mix them and match them any way you want. So we have built into the platform a little over 3,000 templates right now. These numbers are going up and down all the time. And you can look at any one of these templates. We'll grab some of the reported fishes of the week, and you can preview and see what that looks like and say, yes, that's what it is. If you wanted to, you could modify one of those templates, add items into it. So you can see they're fairly, these are probably phishing emails that you may have actually already seen in your organization, because these are the most common ones that we see, and they're updated on a weekly basis. But if you wanted to, you could modify these, change the domain names. You can spoof your own domain. You can spoof other domains. So you can link to company logos, whatever it takes to make a very realistic looking phishing email. You can do that within here. So once you've decided what you actually want a template to look like and which ones you want to use, you have to talk about what happens if someone actually fails and clicks on one of those. So that's what we call landing pages. And again, similar to email templates, you have your own personal ones, and then you have your system landing pages. And these are ones that you can customize as you need to, or just use out of the box. So our most basic landing page is this one here. So just some basic rules to follow. And then they get a little bit more interesting. So I like to point out this one. This is not an error. This is actually on purpose. There's a 404 page. That way your users don't know that you phished them, actually. They just say, hey, that didn't work. So a little bit sneaky to do it that way. And then we have ones that look like login pages. We have other ones that are quite a bit more advanced for doing simulations of ransomware. Actually, this is a brand new one. I'm going to show you this one. If you've ever seen a page like this before, you had a bad day. This is the WannaCry ransomware. And this is the one where you really couldn't actually undo and get rid of it, get your files back. But so we create some of these landing pages to elicit, a response, or sometimes to just trick a user into seeing something else. But a lot of times they're designed to be a learning experience for the user. So some of them are what we call our SEI landing pages, which is social engineering indicators. So these, I can bring up an example of one of those. This one here has the rules, but down below it actually has whatever email was sent to the user, and it highlights the red flags that they should have caught in the message. So out of those 3,000 odd templates that we have, all of them have these red flags embedded in such a way that whatever email gets sent to the user is highlighted for them on this landing page so they can see what it is that they missed and what they should be looking for in the messages. And if you want to, you can actually modify those red flags yourself. So this is a nice way to make those failures into a little moment where you can try to point out what they did wrong and what they could do to correct that. The last thing you need to know when you're actually going to send a phishing test is who you're going to send it to. We talked about what you're sending, what happens if they fail. We didn't talk about who you're going to send it to. And I talked a little bit about users earlier, but I glossed over groups because groups are a really important part of our platform. And for that reason, we have three different types. We have rules that are driven through Active Directory, hence the little Windows logo. We have rules that are not driven by Active Directory. These are ones that are just in the console. And then we have these ones with little guys here. These are our smart groups. Smart groups are actually really cool because they're not, you can't actually put a person in smart groups. You actually have to specify criteria to include them in there. So this particular one is looking for people that have had 3 failures at any time. The moment a person has 4 failures, they don't count. The moment the person has, they've got 2 failures, it doesn't count. So this is an example of a very simple smart group. But there's some other ones that are a little bit more involved, such as this one, where you're looking for users that have not completed a particular course ever, and they're a member of management. So if you wanted to find those users, you could see there's 23 users. I can go in here and look for a specific phishing event, and I can say they've clicked more than 0 times ever, and I can say I'm looking for ones that have replied. And you can see now there's actually nobody that meets that criteria. None of the people in management have ever replied. But let's go back and do any failure. And I can look for any failures in, say, the last 6 months. And you can see that still has 23. And there's a couple other cool things like little Venn diagrams that show how all those users relate. But smart groups are a wonderful way to onboard people. You can find people that were just added. You can find people that have never done compliance training. You can find people that did their compliance training, but it's been a year. You can find the habitual clickers. So smart groups double as a workflow tool, as well as a reporting tool. You can find users, and then you can actually do something to remediate whatever that information is you found about them. So enough about groups. Let's actually show how a phishing campaign gets created. So we go into campaigns, we create a campaign, and it's as simple as starting off with giving a campaign a name. So we'll call this a sample here. You select a group. So this could be the static groups, the Active Directory groups, or perhaps one of those smart groups. And once you get going on that, let's say we go with marketing group here, you then give some details of, is it an ongoing? Is it something that is a one-time? When does it send? And then what are you actually sending? So these categories are the system categories or your own personal categories. And perhaps you just use reported phishes of the week. And then by default, it's full random. And this is one of those things about Noble4 is that we really push, don't send everybody the same email. What you do at that point is you find out how friendly your users are. You know, if Jane in accounting says, hey, don't click on the gym membership, it's a test, it's those sly IT folks again. All you did was you found out that Jane is very helpful to her coworkers. You did not get to find out if your users are actually paying attention to each and every email and looking at it to see if it's legitimate. So full random helps mitigate that problem so that you're actually testing the users and not finding out who's friendly. So from here, you hit Create Campaign, and you're off to the races. If I set this to be a weekly campaign, that means that marketing is going to be phished every week. But perhaps I did a smart group, so multiple failures in the past year. And what that would do is I'm just going to send those people every week. Now, once they drop off that list, it'll back off and it won't send those emails because they no longer meet that criteria. This allows for a tiered phishing approach. You can increase difficulty, you can increase frequency, you can do a lot of different things with this to tune it to get that percentage down. It's not unheard of for organizations to go from a 20, 30% phishing failure rate to less than 1% if they really go after people and correct the ones that need a cultural shift. All right, run a little tight on time, so I'm going to jump away from phishing now, and I'm going to talk about training. Training works very similarly to the phishing in that you set up a campaign. It could be an ongoing campaign, or it could be a specific time that it needs to complete. But training, you need to know about content. Content is pretty much king for KnowBe4, and we have the largest collection of security awareness training content in the business, no question. I always have to look. So we're up to 929 pieces of content. That content ranges from short videos to interactive training modules, to games, posters, PDFs. It covers everything you could possibly imagine. We've even done things like episode-driven series. Now, think about Netflix type thing. So you end up with this one here, which is it's a short 8-minute video that actually goes through a 12-episode series that follows security awareness training, but it's actually set in an office environment. It's more of a story than anything else. It's really interesting how users will watch a couple episodes and then they'll request to see the next training module. That's a first that people actually ask for security awareness training. So, like I said, we have a lot of different things. Part of it is because not only do we produce our own content, we have several strategic acquisitions as well as content partners that produce this content. So if I show you content from Popcorn Training, which is one of our offices that's in South Africa, it's a very fun, light, a lot of animation type of approach to training. Then I go to Exploki, which is one of our groups out of Germany. It becomes a very corporate, very monochromatic but straightforward training. Then you can go to things like Twist and Shout, which is all different types of videos that are live action. So it runs the whole gamut of what could possibly fit in your organization. You can also filter it based off of what type. We have targeted training for specific roles and for specific industries. And then we can go down if you want to go even further and just try to find something. Let's say you're looking for training having to do with GDPR. So you can click into that, find all the GDPR training that we have, and then drill into that even further and take a look. So this is a 15-minute module. It goes over GDPR. You can preview it. You can see that a lot of our content is translated into over 30 different languages, and we're adding more content constantly. I believe we've added over 200 translations. Actually, no, it's May. It's not April. So this month we probably haven't added 200, but last month we added over 200 translations. So once you finish picking out the content that you want to do, the platform is very simple to do, and it's driven through the campaigns. You set up the campaigns. You can drill into a campaign and find out how far things are from being done. You can go in further and actually see where people sit. You can nudge those people that haven't finished. You can nudge their managers. There's templates that can be set up to automatically email people, or you can do it manually. If you have your own content, you can upload your own SCORM compliant training or video content, so you can deploy that. So if you have something that's specific to your industry or to your organization, you can put that in there. You can also upload your own policies if you need to, so that people can agree to those. So it's a very featured LMS that's targeted for awareness training and for making sure people are doing that as well as their compliance training. I got a couple more minutes, so I'm going to touch on a couple more tabs up at the top here. We have voice phishing, so that is the vishing. So this is where you can have the system call out to people and find out if they're entering digits when something prompts them to do that. And again, it's driven through templates. You can record your own audio or do text-to-speech, or you can use the ones that are built into the platform. We have our USB drive test, which is where you can drop a USB thumb drive, see if people pick it up and plug it in and open the files that are on there. And if they do that, you get some information about what system was used to do that. And then we have ADA, which is one of our other artificial intelligence components. This is the artificial intelligence-driven agent. This one is not like the virtual risk officer, which is looking at what users do. This is actually trying to phish your users for you. And I'd like to point out that when you create an ADA-driven campaign, there's a lot less in the way of options. You can see you don't set what templates you use. You don't set frequency. All you say is who to go after, and you give it some rules of engagement, because not only will ADA reach out to users via email, but it can also text them or call them, and a lot of times it'll link those together to where one vector will reference another vector. Adds a bit more legitimacy to it when a user gets a dentist reminder voicemail that also comes with an email invite to confirm the root canal that they have on Wednesday. And who doesn't love a good Wednesday root canal? So ADA is tricky like that, so it'll do things along those lines. And actually, I'm going to skip ahead here just for time. I'm going to talk about our advanced reporting. So all of the things that I've just shown have a plethora of reports that you can get into here. So we actually have a whole other section that goes over that. So you can do reports that are based off of group. You can do reports that are based off of location, any of the fields on users. You can do things like group report cards. So if you want to drill into a specific group, find out what the risk has been, their phish-prone percentage, what types of failures, is the group growing or shrinking, what type of training they've done. There's actually 70 different reports in the report center here, so I can't go through all of those, but some of them get pretty advanced. Like this one here, you can look at phishing susceptibility over time as it relates to how much training they've done. So pretty advanced capabilities in the reports. And if there's not enough data here, all of the information that's used to feed this is available through an API. So if you want to plug it into your own BI tool or dashboard, you can do that as well. So that is my product demo. I'm going to go back to slides here for just a second. Then I'm going to take some questions. And let's go over here. And I think I've got it going. And this is just to preemptively ask some of the questions of like, how is this priced? It's priced per user per year. So depending on the size of the organization, it's on a sliding scale. The larger you are, the less you pay, that sort of thing comes in. And then it has to do with the subscription levels. So of course, when I do demonstrations, I'm always going to show the Cadillac. So that was the Diamond, which has all of the training content and all of the features. We also have the Silver, Gold, and Platinum. And the big differences are the amount of content. Down at the Silver level, you get bare bones, just a handful of courses, enough to get started with things. Once you go to Gold or Platinum, you get all of the know-before content, but none of the content from the other publishers. There's also features that are tied to those subscription levels. Things like the smart groups, those are available at the Platinum level and the reporting APIs. There's also ability to do security roles where you can give certain people access to do some of the things in the platform. So maybe you have a training group that trains the users and a different group that phishes the users. You can do that. You have the ability to make it so that if you have perhaps a business unit where the manager wants to actually see the reports in the console and maybe even phish their own users, you could set that up in there using the security role. So there's a lot of features there that larger organizations may take advantage of and smaller ones may just ignore. So that is the high-level demonstration of the KnowBe4 platform. And so I'll give myself a little bit of time for some questions here, I think. David?
Yeah, great demo, Greg. Thank you very much. I always love seeing the live demos, and you all are doing some really innovative stuff. So let's see. First comment actually that came in, Angela said, I love KnowBe4. I got a previous company from 93% to 0.2 phish-prone percentage in 8 months. So I'm sure you guys like to hear that kind of feedback.
That's great. That's wonderful. Thank you, Angela.
Yeah. Another question that came in here, they're asking, is the training hosted or is it on-site?
Okay, so the training is all done inside of the platform. So it's not an on-site. We're not going to come on-site and actually train your users. Although the content is set up in such a way that if you want to, you can download the content and put it into your own LMS. Some of the content is designed to be downloaded and printed, like the posters and media. So if you wanted to do awareness training, in the break room or something. That video series I showed earlier for Inside Man, we've actually had customers that have downloaded that and set it up on loop in the break room. So there's a couple different vectors you can deploy the training, and ASAP touches on that. When you go through that security awareness program setup, it tells you these are some of the best practices to get the most out of your training.
Nice, nice. And that's kind of like the security in-depth approach. I mean, there's multiple places that people need security awareness training. It's not just one thing that you do, in your web browser. It needs to be everywhere, and I think that's smart. Another question here, is there a limit to the amount of phishing tests I can send?
No. You can phish your users as often as you like. We recommend that you phish them every 2 weeks, every month, not any less frequently than that because, as you said, it's one of those things where you have to do reinforcement and have the users kind of keep it in their mind. Remember, it's not about turning them into security professionals. It's awareness. Sending an email once a month is it keeps them on their toes a little bit so that they're looking at things. You're better off if they click on a simulation than a real phishing email. So that's another way to look at it. So yes, we don't put any limits on there. I know customers that phish their users every week. The one thing I can recommend is that if you do find yourself having a hard time getting management to buy into monthly phishing and they say, no, it's quarterly or it's biannually, first of all, you're certainly not going to drive your numbers down as quickly as a person that's following the best practices. But one of the things you can do with smart groups is you can easily say, look, how about this? I'll phish everybody every 3 months, but anybody that fails, can I phish them every month until they stop failing for, on that quarterly basis? It takes about 5 minutes to set that sort of a thing up in the console, and that will actually give you an even better chance of actually seeing that percentage go down over time because you're identifying people, and sooner or later, pretty much everyone's going to have a point where they slip up and fail, and they get that more frequent testing, and then it just becomes the normal thing, and next thing you know, your users are actually making smarter security decisions.
Nice, nice. I want to call the attention to the audience to the poll question on the screen. What additional information would you like about the KnowBe4 solution? And let's take another question here from the audience. What's the pricing model for the KnowBe4 solution?
So the pricing is per user per year at the different subscription levels. I can give you as a basic point of reference, it's about $16 a year per user for a 500 user deployment. So it's cheap at twice the price for getting that type of a change with your users. All it takes is one ransomware incident to go ahead and make it very obvious that, this was a good thing to do. So best way to get pricing is to reach out to sales. If there's anything I didn't demonstrate, like I said, I try to keep them quick here. So if you do, you can request for a direct demo from one of those reps as well.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, I think that's all the time we have for live questions, but a really great demo. Thanks again so much for being on today, Greg.
Thank you.
For more information on the KnowBe4 solution, of course, visit knowbe4.com. Also, check out the handout that's available for download right there in your audience console. And I'll go ahead and leave up the poll question that's on the screen there. What additional information would you like about the KnowBe4 solution while I announce our next Tango $500 gift card winner? That next gift card winner is Susan Kerr from Washington. Congratulations, Susan Kerr from Washington. If you are not Susan, we've got one more gift card to give away after our next presentation, so make sure you stay tuned for that giveaway. All right, now it's time for our next presenter, and I'm excited to welcome first-time presenter on today's event, Mr. Thomas Hatch. He is the CEO and co-founder of SaltStack. Thomas, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Go ahead and take it away.
All right, will do. So I'm with SaltStack, and we've been developing systems automation software for quite a few years. And recently, we decided to start introducing a new approach to security operations and really expressing this new SecOps space. Now, what it boils down to in this SecOps space is that when we come back and we look at the systems that are being managed inside of an infrastructure, when we scan these systems for security issues, how this generally works today is that a lot of reports get generated by a security team, and then those reports are handed over to the operations team. And then the operation team goes through those reports, fixes things over time, and then goes back to the security team. They scan again, and they find new issues. But the main thing that we're trying to say right now is that reports are not remediation. When we get through and look at the actual reports and the actual security risks that are being exposed in the market today, Gartner is saying that most of those risks that exist are not getting remediated and that they're still being a problem more than a year into those security issues being discovered. And so what happens there is that you end up in this situation where vulnerabilities and security exploits and issues are getting exploited far sooner than they used to. You go back over 10 years and it would take 45 days for a security exploit to be, a vulnerability to actually be exploited. Whereas today, on average, it's only taking 3 days. What this means is that as a security professional, the time window that you have to actually secure your systems has gotten extremely small. And so this old paradigm of scanning an infrastructure, scanning your servers, scanning your network, creating a report that says that this is where all of these problems exist, and then handing that report over to an operations team and then waiting for that operations team to fix it it's just no longer creating a tenable situation. But instead what it creates is a disconnect between your InfoSec and your IT operations team. And this is where the philosophy of SecOps comes in. SecOps is like the DevOps philosophy, where we're saying that there are different teams that we should be able to allow communication between, and that those teams that we're focusing on as opposed to developers and operations at this point is the InfoSec and the IT Ops teams. And so SaltStack's for SecOps platform is built to try and make it so that these teams can work together towards the goal of creating an actually secure stance, an actually secure infrastructure. And so the problem that we run into is that we have these operations team again, and they say we need to maintain stability. We have the security team that says that they need to maintain security and compliance, and both of those teams need to have agility. Everybody together needs to push new code quickly, make sure that their infrastructure is secure, make sure that their networks are secure, and make sure that they can't be hacked, as nobody wants to be the next company on the front page. And so this is where SaltStack's model comes into play. SaltStack for SecOps allows you to define the security stance that you want to take from a policy-driven approach. When we come back and we talk to CISOs and we talk to all of the security professionals, they say, look, not only do we need something that actually modifies and updates the system to be secure, but we also need something that can be customized to our own internal security policies. When we look at how these infrastructures are secured, the CISO and that company, that organization has a policy that needs to be expressed inside of their data center and cloud systems. And so we take a policy-driven approach so that it's easier to say, this is the stance, this is the security posture that we're going for, and derive the components of that policy from numerous existing security benchmarks. And then we're able to scan, which is really nothing new, but after we have that scan, we have the ability to also go back and remediate those security issues. Now, when we look at the remediation of security issues inside of an infrastructure, that's really where that disconnect comes, because the definition of a security policy and the scanning of an infrastructure is typically what falls under the purview of your security team. And then the remediation and enforcement of those policies fall under the operations team. And so our platform has been defined to be able to allow both of these roles to interface in our UI, so that the operations team is the team that's making those changes, but that we provide that operations team with the automation and the startup so that it becomes very easy for them to take that direct scan and put it into reality and enforcement. And so now let me hop over to a demo of our solution. We've got a system up here where what we're looking at is that we are logged into our SaltStack Enterprise console as a user named Ollie. Now, for the sake of simplifying a demo, Ollie will be doing both the job of a security professional and an operations professional, but that can also often be the same person's job in smaller organizations as well. And so again, we've tried to build this system in such a way that we're able to cater to the needs of both a small organization all the way up to very large organizations. And so the console that we're looking at right now is just a quick overview of the systems that we have under management today. And so quite a few servers that are available. If we switch over to our SecOps tab, we're able to look at a number of compliance scans and policies that we have already created. So let's walk through the creation of one of these policies. So I can make a policy and name it, and then inside of SaltStack Enterprise, we have a concept called targets. And so we have the ability to define a target, which is just a selection of different systems that we are managing, and we can define that target in a number of different ways. It's very flexible and very powerful. And so we selected a predefined target called Security Group West. Then we're able to go through and take a look at the different benchmarks that we currently have. It's flooding the front of the page here for Windows, Oracle, Linux, Red Hat Linux, and so we can select one or more of those benchmarks and then move forward. After we select that benchmark, you can see that we've exposed all of the checks that are relative to said benchmark. And then we've got a summary of what those checks are, what they're doing on the system, and their severity, etc. Let's do a more terse check and just select some cron-based checks. Now, if we look over here again at the description, the check and which operating systems it's applicable to, and what that remediation looks like. But also, we have what's called our salt state file. This is the heart of our automation and scanning system. And this state file allows you to see and remediate this particular vulnerability. And so we've selected a number of these, and we are able to then move forward. Now, we give you the option of scheduling if you want to run this scan on a regular basis. Again, for the sake of a demo, we'll just run it manually. And so there we go. We're now looking at a new policy, which we have defined. And this new policy, we can run an assessment. And the assessment will take a minute to be able to reach out to those systems, run that scan. We can now move forward and take a look at the systems and see that, yep, these are the systems that are included in this scan that were part of the target that we defined. If we wanted to, we could dive into more specific details about those systems. If we go to exemptions, then we can see that we didn't define any exemptions in this policy, but just as one would need to is necessarily be able to come back and define which exemptions need to be given. And looks like the scan has come back, and it looks like everything is in compliance, except for let's see. So we've got 3 that are out of compliance. There we go. And so let's say that now we want to fix those. We want to get it into compliance. All we've got to do is check that box and then hit remediate. And so as soon as we hit remediate, that sends another command out to those systems that are not compliant and puts them back into play. Changing the system to be compliant, changing the configuration on that system is one of those places where people start to get nervous, right? We're actually changing these live systems to be in compliance. And this is one of the reasons why this still combines the needs of an operations team and a security team. If we remember back in those checks, we were able to see exactly what is going to happen with that change. So the operations person is able to come back and look at this and say, I can see very specifically that we are going to be installing these packages and setting up these services. And it also means that that conveys back to the operations person that these are the basic steps that we would take to put this system into compliance. And so if they came back and looked at this and said, I see what it would take to put this into compliance, but I would to do it in a way that is better tailored to your infrastructure. But the reality there as well is that the vast majority of these security postures and configurations still remain very generic. And in the customers that we've worked with, they've come back and said that typically well over 90% of the cases, what we are able to ship with really buttons everything up and brings it together. So now we should be able to go back and hopefully that system should be remediated by now. And so we can rerun an assessment, and that new assessment should come back and be completely green in another minute. Now, the great thing about what we're looking at here again is the goal is to merge the functionality of these two teams that don't get along, give them an interface that they can work with, but also an interface that the goal of many of these security operations teams is to be able to make sure that their security posture is something that is very easy to look at their infrastructure and say, yes, my systems are configured to be secure. But we also know that there's kind of a decay factor. Configurations change. We just don't feel as present in the industry today. And also, this is really where it comes back to this concept of SecOps, merging those two worlds together. And so that's what I've got. I'm just looking to see if we've got any questions.
I've got some questions for you we can save for the Q&A session at the end. Are you done with your demo there?
Yep, we're all done.
Excellent, excellent. I love seeing the product in action. Thank you, Thomas. While I let me pop up a poll question here actually for the audience while we run through the Q&A session. So the question on the screen is, what additional information would you like about the SaltStack solution? And I'll just leave that up while we do some Q&A. So the first question that came in here, they're asking, is SaltStack a hardware solution or software solution or both? How does that work?
So SaltStack is a software solution, and it's made to be able to automate on-premise and cloud systems. What we do is we install a management agent on the systems that you want to manage. And actually, let me back up there. We have the ability to manage systems directly with an agent, or we have the ability to manage systems in an agentless way over SSH, or we have the ability to manage systems that need to be managed in a more lightweight or API-centric way through a system we call the Salt proxy. And so that allows you to really address whatever system needs you need to be able to tackle.
Okay. And does this work on, I mean, when you say you install it on the host, is it work on Windows or Linux or both?
Yeah, so we work on all major Linux distributions, all currently supported versions of Windows, Mac OS, AIX, and Solaris.
Excellent, excellent. And another question here, where does the compliance content come from, and how do you keep that up to date?
So the compliance content is continually being produced by SaltStack. And the SaltStack Enterprise platform is reaching back up to SaltStack on a regular basis and downloading updates to that content as we continue day after day to add more to it and refine it.
Nice. And so can the users customize this? Can they create their own benchmarks or customize the existing benchmarks?
Yes. So we're actually deepening our ability to do that at this point. And so in upcoming releases, it's going to get smoother and smoother as we build in more hooks to make it very easy for users to not only create their own content, but also create their content in a developer-centric way. And we're also giving them a complete, really an SDK around building content and combining that with being able to fully test and vet that content as well.
Okay. And here's an interesting question. Does SaltStack collect data that companies can use as part of an audit?
Yeah. So the information that we're bringing back is, again, relative to those standardized benchmarks. And so you can create your policy to directly reflect what an auditor is going to come back and want, as well as put exemptions in and everything that you would need.
Okay. And if somebody was interested in SaltStack, I mean, if they want to try it out, what's the first step? How do they get started?
Okay. The best thing to do would be to reach out to sales. We've got quite a few resources that are available, as well as demos online that are much more exhaustive than the one that I just gave. And we'd be able to get back in touch with you with a trial license that would allow you to start managing a few systems very, very quickly.
Excellent, excellent. Well, sounds easy to get started. Again, thank you so much for being on the event today. It looks like that's all the questions we have for now, but I love seeing the live demo, and thanks for joining us on today's Security EcoCast.
Thanks again for having me. It was great to be here.
For more information on SaltStack, of course, check out the URL that's on the screen right there, saltstack.com/SecOps. And also check out the handout that's available for download there in your audience console. That handout is actually the SaltStack SecOps white paper that covers automated universal IT system compliance and security enforcement. And you can learn a lot more about the SaltStack SecOps solution in that paper. And with that, it's time to award our final Tango gift card on today's event. That gift card is going to William DiDomenico. Oh, William DiDomenico. Forgive me if I'm saying that wrong. From Pennsylvania. Congratulations, William DiDomenico from Pennsylvania. You won a Tango $500 gift card. We will reach out to you to deliver your gift card. Before everyone disconnects from the event, just a couple quick reminders. I want to point you to there we go, it's coming up. The Countermeasure Security Newsletter. This is a security newsletter that's released every week. You can stay up to date on the latest on enterprise security, and you can visit the countermeasure.co to subscribe to that newsletter. Also go to the Handouts tab on your console, and right there you'll find a link to click and subscribe to the Countermeasure newsletter. I also want to remind you to check out our 10 on Tech podcast over in the iTunes store. You can subscribe and tune in to the latest interviews related to innovative enterprise technology. If you're interested in sponsoring a future EcoCast or MegaCast event, always feel free to reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And finally, don't forget to join us on an upcoming EcoCast that's actually next Wednesday, which is optimizing your virtual environment. If you have a virtual environment, vSphere, Hyper-V, whatever it might be, and you're interested in making it perform better and be more efficient, make sure you register for this event. You can do that at events.actualtechmedia.com. Also watch your email inbox for an invitation to join us on that event. Well, it's been an amazing and awesome emerging enterprise IT security innovations EcoCast event. I've learned a lot about the latest innovations in enterprise security. I hope that you have too. I hope that you had a good time doing it. And I know I loved every presenter today did a live demo, and I really enjoyed that. I hope that you did too as well. So I hope that you have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.